not to attack Ram, but to bring Ram back. He wanted to bring Ram back. He didn't want the throne. Here's another example. Bart's an ideal example. He could have had the kingdom. He could have had everything. He didn't want that. His allegiance and his love for his brother, and he understood what was righteous too. Ram was meant to be the king, not him. So you see in today's world, right? If you get a position at the expense of someone else, maybe you think, well, I deserved it. It's my karma. Or God has arranged it. But a person who lives by values, who lives by principles, will say, no. And this was Bart. He didn't want it because he understood it wasn't meant for him. And you see in today's world, politicians will even kill their opponents so they can get to whatever position that they're seeking for. And I preach in jails. And so there was one inmate in one jail we were preaching in. And this man was murder for hire. This was in India. Because in India, and maybe you know this, in certain places in India, if the opponent doesn't like he sees his opponent in office, he'll hire somebody to kill him. Yeah, and it goes on regularly. And this was in South India, where it's supposed to be more pious. So he had killed 8 people, and all hired by different politicians to kill their opponents, right? So this goes on. People they're so greedy, lusty, and avaricious, and just, absorbed in their own selfish interests, that they'll do anything to get power, to get position. But a devotee will not think like that. A devotee will not think, well, I need a good position in Krishna consciousness. Then I can be, I can make advancement. Well, what is the position in Krishna consciousness? I was just talking to Kartik Chandra yesterday. It was just a day ago, and he was explaining from Shastra point of view what is the highest position a devotee can get. And these are in the prayers by King Kulashetra. And the highest position one can get is Das, 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 Anudas. 7 times removed. That is seen by the Lord as the highest position that one can attain in spiritual life, to become the servant of 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 the servant 7 times over. And that's mentioned in Shastra. And Prabhupada talks about that too as a principle. Not to think, well, position means success. No, that's material. What is it? What is our position? Gopi Bhattar Padakamalaya Dasa Dasana. That's what Lord Chaitanya teaches. The best position is to become the humble servant. That is the highest position. Whether we're a temple president or sannyasi or a guru or whatever role we're playing in our execution of devotional service, the mood is, I'm a servant. I've been given this position. And not that in the material world, I gotta have that position, or else I don't feel happy. Or I can't fulfill my propensities as, But that's not Krishna consciousness. That's not Ram consciousness. That's material consciousness. That position, because people are seen by the position. They're not seen by the qualities. If a person has a good position, they're honored by that. If you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of power, you can influence others, you can get things done. You're seen as successful, and people aspire for that same thing. That's material. In the spiritual world, this devotee aspires for service. How can I serve? And Bart, he's in the situation where, I've been given this, and this is not really what I want. I want the happiness of the citizens. I want the happiness of my brother. Therefore, I'm not going to take this. And so he does everything he can he goes to the forest, he meets Ram. Ram welcomes Lakshman. When Lakshman sees Bharat coming with all the armies, he gets his bow and arrow ready. He said, I'm going to finish him off. Lakshman is a little bit impetuous. He's got that super Kshatriya spirit. And when he sees the situation, he sometimes reacts. And Ram says, no, he's coming in. He's not coming in that way. And finally he has to convince Lakshman that, it's not like that. And then he finally does. And then there's a beautiful exchange between Ram and Bharat. It's so beautiful. And first, when Ram sees him, he says, how is father? And Ram apparently doesn't know what happened. His father could not live without him. And so he died of heartbreak. Died of heartbreak. And this is another cause of death. People actually lose hope in life. We were mentioning it just the other day in a discussion, how sometimes in the family, and when people get old, one of the persons in the family will die. And you'll see, because of that loving relationship is no longer experienced, that person is no longer with us, the other person goes down. It's just natural. That's the nature of love. That's the nature of being with others in an intimate way. And so, this was and of course, we can take it on another level, that Dasaratha was feeling separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although he wasn't aware of that, still that element was there. And that separation, along with the breaking of the actual relationship, caused him was no longer. When Ram heard that, Ram cried. He actually cried. He broke down and cried when he heard his father was no longer there. That's how much he loved his father. So playing the role, he's not playing the role. This is his nature. Because the Lord, although he knows everything, and he can understand everything at all times, in all places, with all people, still he has loving emotions, and he reciprocates with his parts and parcels in that way. So the Lord was actually feeling brokenhearted that his father was no longer there. And then Bharat said, I'm not going to take the kingdom. I'll stay in the forest. You go back. You rule the kingdom. All the citizens want you. You'll make everyone happy. And I'll fulfill the desire that our father wants one of his sons in the forest. So he kind of changed it around. Ram said, no. This is the instruction of my father. He has given me this. Now he is no longer here. How can I refuse his order? Again, dedication to superiors in such a deep way. And it appears that it'll be contrary to everyone's best interest. But that was his word. That was his promise. That was his allegiance. So there we learn so much from the qualities of Ram. I don't know. I'm just going to say something on a personal level. As that, maybe I shouldn't. Okay. It bothers me when somebody says they're going to do something and they don't do it. I don't know. Not that I'm so righteous. Circumstances sometimes force a situation in a different way. But that's rare. But generally, when someone says, I will do something. I'm going to meet you today at 5 o'clock. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I couldn't come. Well, why didn't you call me? So giving your word to someone and making sure either you follow the word or make the adjustments, this is a very important principle in relationships. This can cause relationships to fall apart, especially when circumstances are important in following what you say. In other words, there's some loss if you don't follow. So giving your word is a very important part of actually Krishna consciousness. Because just like when we take initiation, we say, Guru Maharaj, you know, it's that day where everything is, you know, you're in heaven. It's so wonderful. I'm getting initiated. This is what and I got my spiritual master. And even before you ask, will you chant 16 rounds every day, minimum, follow oh, yes, 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 no question. Time is the test, and such situations are unseen because we can't see. But Prabhupada makes the point, when we make that vow, we should be willing to keep that vow under all and every circumstance. It is so important. And unfortunately, and I use the word with emphasis, it doesn't happen. So it's important that when we make that promise to the spiritual master, to the fire, to the assembly of Vaishnavas, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of those are witnessing that vow. As one person said, a promise, you can break it sometimes, but a vow, vows cannot be broken. Vow is a promise that is like steel. It's not breakable. So, and then it's inconvenient. But staying in the material world is also inconvenient. And so by breaking those principles, you're again moving yourself back into the entanglement of material energy. They're protections. So I'm using that example just to show how important, and this is illustrated throughout the entire, with Hanuman, with Sita, with Ram, with Bart, all of the characters, they live by principle. Except Ravana. Ravana, he would do whatever he needed to do in order to fill it. So Ravana represents that which we don't want to do. I'll tell you a little anecdote. Ravana was walking around, so he came to the palace of Vibhishan. He goes into the palace of Vibhishan. He sees on the wall R-A-M-A, Rama. He looks at his brother. He said, "What is this? Are you worshipping my enemy?" Vibhishan says, "No, my dear brother, you don't understand. R.A. is your first two initials, and your wife is Mandodari. So it's R-A-M-A. So I'm actually putting your name and your wife's name up." Oh, Ravana said, "Oh, that's wonderful. Let's put it all over the kingdom." So that's what happened. So he spread Ram's name all over the kingdom. So that's using a little bit of, well, we say duplicity, but it works. When you're dealing with a cheater, sometimes you have to cheat. But don't use that all the time. This requires some counseling before activity. So now Bart brings the shoes of Ram and says, I'm not going to rule the kingdom. I'm going to stay here. And Ram said, no, actually, I have to listen to him. And then the dialogue goes on. But then Bart can no longer come up with arguments to convince Ram that he has to come back. So he says, give me your shoes. And of course, Ram gives him these shoes. He said, I will rule the kingdom from another place, but you will be actually the king. And so he wanted those shoes, and then when he went back, he placed those shoes on the throne, and he ruled from a place called Nandigram, which was right near Ayodhya. He never entered Ayodhya. He stayed in Nandigram. We were on pilgrimage one time in that area, and we came to the place of Nandigram where Bart actually performed, and he lived on barley cooked in cow urine for 14 years. For 14 years. He didn't take any of the royalty, any of the luxury. He performed this great austerity, and he simply, and of course, people would come to him and ask about management, ruling, administration, and he did his duty, but he always said, this is on behalf of Ram. Ram is actually giving. I am simply here as his voice, that's all. He was completely selfless. He wasn't willing to take, even when Ram refused, he could have went back and said, well, all right, I'll be the king and get all the benefits of, that position. No. He knew it wasn't meant for him. He didn't want to be something different than actually what was his heart. His heart was that Ram was the actual ruler. So we see such dedication, such love, such commitment to principle, and such allegiance to following values as opposed to what's convenient. And I use that, what's convenient is that, yeah, there's a kirtan tonight, but I got to go to work because I need the money. But money will come anyway. That's kind of a loose example. But sometimes we sacrifice our spiritual practices in order to fulfill our material needs, and I use that with parentheses. It's not always needs. Money comes, money goes, and money comes again. But the opportunity for sadhu sangha, to associate with devotees, to engage in devotional service, is not something, it's not a privilege, it's rare. It's very rare. We might think, well, it's available, but it's very rare. It's a blessing to have the opportunity to engage in devotional service. It's actually a blessing because that blessing will get us the fulfillment of all our desires. What is that? Taktva deham purna janmani naiti mameti shardena. One can be free from all of the miseries of material life, find complete happiness and full knowledge, and ultimately, at the end of life, return back home, back to Godhead. So time is short. Time is short. So we should use as much time as we can for Krishna consciousness, because every minute is so valuable. It's so valuable. Okay. So another interesting example is, and this is a nice, have you ever heard the word menial service? Sometimes we use the word menial service. Prabhupada never liked that. He shot it down in one lecture. He says there's no such thing as menial service. Service is service. Devotional service doesn't fall into the category of menial or superior. It's the absolute principle of the internal energy of the Lord by which the living entity can connect with Krishna. So the kind of service you do is incidental to the activities of service itself. There's no such thing as menial service. So we have the example. When the monkey soldiers were on the shore and they had to build that bridge to cross over the ocean to go to Lanka, Hanuman was there, and he was also helping, and he was throwing these big boulders into the ocean. And Ram was writing his name on it. And because Ram was writing his name on it, the boulders were floating. Which means that, when you chant the holy names of the Lord, you're no longer subject to the influence of the laws of material energy. You're transcendental to that. And so Hanuman was throwing these big boulders, and then there was a little squirrel there. And the squirrel was, kind of like wanted to help, but he was a squirrel. He couldn't do much. He was kicking little grains. And Hanuman said, come on, this is man's work, move aside. And so he was pushing the squirrel out. Ram noticed that. And Ram immediately corrected Hanuman. He said, he is doing as much as you are doing. You're working to your capacity. He's working to his capacity. That is devotional service. So when we see things like that, sometimes we look for quality, and we want quality. Quality is an expression of bhakti. But if a person is doing their best in devotional service, that's being accepted by the Lord as perfect. They're trying their best to please. They're working in that mind spirit, and they're using their intelligence in the best possible way. So there's no such thing as higher and lower service. It's a feature of the heart. And this is that example. Ram said, that squirrel is doing as much as you are doing. Because you're working to your capacity and he is working to. So we should see, this person's distributing books and this person's washing the floor. Prabhupada said they're equal. Because they're all meant for service to the Lord, like that. So for those of you who may feel, I just cook once in a while and that's all I do, and no, every service is appreciated when it's done in that mood to please the Lord, to please the devotees, to help push on Krishna consciousness. So that's an important principle that is being mentioned here in that example. And here, and another example is bhakti cannot be achieved by deception. Ravana wanted to kidnap Sita Devi by deception, but he got Maya Sita. He didn't get the real Sita. Greed and lust can never give satisfaction. They lead to arrogance and envy. We have the example. We learn from positive and we also learn from what is negative. Ravana had everything materially. He had followers, loyal followers, kingdom made of gold, palaces. He was powerful. Everything a materialist could want in perfection. But he wasn't satisfied. He was not satisfied. Good example. What does the material world teach you? You need more. More money, more position, more. And the whole idea is just to get you to keep working in that direction, which pushes on the whole principle of greed, more and more and more. But Ravana is an example of having everything. And even when he got, apparently, he didn't get, but he captured Sita, his misery increased. How did his misery increase? She was not willing to succumb to his, licentious advancement. She became another stumbling block in his unhappiness. He was already unhappy. He presented himself as being happy, but he wasn't. If you're happy, you're satisfied, right? We have the story from the Srimad Bhagavatam. When Vamanadev, he was offered by Bali Maharaj, you've come, you're a Brahmanam, I'm very charitable, I have everything, just ask anything. I like to gift the Brahmanas, I want to give you something. Ask anything you want. The Lord said, give me 3 steps of land. Bali said, you're so small. What's your 3 steps going to do? I can give you a kingdom, I give you a planet. Nice wife, so many things. He was just making so many offers. And the Lord finally said, one who's not satisfied with what they need can never be satisfied. That was the principle. One who's not satisfied by what they need, they'll never be satisfied. And you see, that's the principle of material life. People are never satisfied. If people were satisfied, they'd be happy. Because satisfaction is the foundation for happiness. But if you're not happy, if you're not satisfied, and satisfaction does not come by way of material things. Material things can support a lifestyle, but can't reach the heart. The heart is only satisfied by love. And Sita, her love was there for Ram. So in her heart, even though she was feeling the separation, still her love kept her going. Her love was that element that made everything tolerable, and with the hope that she would experience his presence. So she was able to undergo so much harassment. I mean, Ravana had these rakshashis, these female ladies. They were coming and they were just harassing her, calling her names and also abusing her, and doing everything they could to somehow break her will so she would succumb to Ravana. But because of her love for Ram, nothing could change. She wasn't willing. She was willing to give up her life before giving up her dedication. Because love carries on beyond the body. It doesn't end with the body. Material love does, but spiritual love is something that is, once it's developed, it only increases, and it goes beyond the body. Now we see how, we see even in the material world, this is quite glorious, and even sometimes a materialist will sacrifice their life in order to give, happiness to someone else. They say, well, we love our country, therefore we'll go fight for our country. But it's based on the wrong principle, because it's based on the principle that I am this body. And therefore, when you act on the wrong principle, there's no benefit in that. It's only a loss from the beginning into the end. But from the spiritual principle, that loving relationship carries one for complete happiness, even beyond this body. Doesn't end with them. And that was Sita. She could not be deterred by. And when Ravana, he tried everything. And he couldn't do it. And he was mortified because no one could defy his rule. He was the kind of ruler that got everything he wanted. But he couldn't, even this simple, apparently simple lady, he couldn't use his influence. Of course, there was that curse that if he forced himself on her, he would immediately die. So he was thinking, maybe it'll work. He wasn't sure. But why take a chance? So he didn't gamble. Now we can talk a little bit about leadership. How much time do we have? I'm not sure. I don't see any clocks around. Am I okay on time? Okay. So there's three kinds of leaders. Three kinds of leaders. There's one who has his advisors and he presents the problem, the situation to the advisors. They try to understand it, and by their expert deliberation, they come up with some answer, and they tell this is the solution, and the leader follows. That's ideal leadership. The second kind of leader will go to his ministers and wait for their deliberation, and then if he likes it, he'll follow it. And if he doesn't like it, something else. That's the second kind. And the third kind was they don't ask anybody's advice. They just do whatever they want. Ravana was the second kind. He would ask his advisors what should be done, and if they didn't agree with him, he wouldn't do it. He's almost like the third kind, who doesn't mean to ask anything, but out of formality and thinking maybe they'll come up with some other idea that'll help me fulfill my already conclusion, then I can accept that kind of consultation. So leadership really means to understand that you can't really see the whole situation. You need to have some advice. So one who takes advice from others and tries to understand how that advice applies. Nowadays you don't find that. Leader means nowadays there's no leaders. The ones who are actually leading the world, they are told to do with people you don't even know. There's the ones that are controlling the leaders. So the leaders are just puppets anyway. They have no intelligence. And if they don't go along, they're out. That's today's world. But Ravana was like that. He always did what he wanted, but he would check in around to see if maybe I could learn something by asking advice. But Ram took advice. And he took advice from, his seniors. He took advice from others. And he also asked for advice. Ram was capable alone to take care of Ravana, but he engaged a whole series of 10 million monkeys. That's how many monkeys were there. 10 million. They were known as Varnars. They were actually half demigod and half monkey. When Brahma tells the demigods that the Lord is coming in order to rectify and re-establish religious principles, he needs your help. And of course the Lord doesn't need his help, but that's the way he does things. He employs his devotees. And so they said, you create progeny, and those progeny will be the assistants. And they should be half monkey and half deva. So Bali became the son of Indra, or the offshoot of Indra. And Sugriva became Surya, the sun god. Hanuman was the son of the wind god. So all of the major devas had created these powerful. Susena was the offshoot of Varuna, the god of the oceans. And all of these, and then it was 10 million of them. And so Ram used them to help him in his mission. It's interesting. Give you an example. And this is a principle of leadership. A leadership wants to engage others in the activity of devotional service for the benefits of those persons. They see why I can do it alone, or maybe I can do it with one or two other people, but why not engage more people? And that way they will also benefit. And that will make the activity more pleasing to the Lord when more devotees are involved. So this is one of the principles of leadership, how to, bring other persons in. And the example was when Srila Prabhupada's talking, and he says, devotees asked him, Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, he was here, he was in India, and he traveled all over India. He spread Krishna consciousness all over the subcontinent. Why didn't he take it around the world? He's God, could have did it. Prabhupada said, he left it for me. He left it for me. That's the Lord. And this is an interesting principle. The Lord can do anything and everything. He's all-powerful. If we don't accept the all-powerful nature of the Lord, then we'll have some doubts about how things are happening. He's all-powerful. But he uses his powerfulness to empower his devotees to do the work. And we have many examples. Ram empowered all of those monkeys to assist him in crossing the ocean and to build the bridge and to fight against the Rakshasas. He took counsel from Sugriva to help him find his wife, who was no longer, he could not understand where Sita was. Again, we find how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is inclined to his devotion. And this is a very, very wonderful quality. Try to understand this. This is so important. That whatever we can do, or not, whatever we can do, is really the empowerment of the Lord. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Rasa homap sakuntiya prabhasmi sari surya pranava sarvavedishu sabdike purusham nishu. Sabdike Purusham Nishu said, I am the ability in all living entities. And Krishna also says, Sarvashuja Hamriti Sani Visto Matat Smriti Jnanamapo. I give knowledge. I give forgetfulness. I give remembrance. Krishna does everything through his devotees. If he wants you to forget something, you can't remember. If he wants you to remember something, you can't forget it. He fulfills our desires, but sometimes he goes beyond that, empowers his devotees to do wonderful things, and he gives the credit to the devotees. Ram gave all credit to Hanuman. Hanuman did some very powerful things, but Hanuman is an energy of Ram. Ram gave all credit to Sugriva for organizing the monkeys. So everything was done through Ram, through his devotees, and that way the devotee gets the credit. The Lord, there's so many examples. Should I tell you one story about that? It's a nice experience. Would you like to hear it? Everybody still with me? I know. I'm just making sure because I have to do that because, sometimes you lose. Are they still with me? If you're not, just raise your hand and throw things and then I'll get back on track. Krishna was in Dwarka. And so Krishna, he's there, and this is after the battle of Kurukshetra. Yudhishthira wants to perform a Rajasuya sacrifice to consummate his, taking of the throne and ruling of the world. And this is in line with principles. Now, to do that sacrifice, it takes unlimited amount of wealth, and it takes years to do the whole thing. At least it takes years to prepare for it. So Krishna's there in Dwarka, and Yudhisthira is all there, and there's a big meeting, and they're in the assembly house, and Krishna's there. During the time Krishna was there, a messenger walks in, comes to the door, and the person at the door greets the messenger and asks him why he's come. He said, well, I have a message from Krishna, from the kings that have been imprisoned by Bhaumasura, and it's in the form of a letter. Can I read that letter written by the kings to Krishna? And so the messenger, the guard at the door, announces what this messenger wants. Krishna says, bring him forward. So he's there. And so he reads the letter. My dear Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they're glorifying Krishna in so many ways. We are in a horrible position. We have been captured and imprisoned by this powerful king, Jarasandha, and he's harassing us. And we don't know what is our destiny. We are suffering so much. We're also feeling your separation. So, and then it goes on, and at the end of the letter says, please save us. Please save us. So Krishna's listening, and everybody's waiting for Krishna to say something. Krishna turns to Uddhava. Uddhava, what should we do? Because there's a conflict. The Rajasuya sacrifice, Yudhisthira wants Krishna to come and be the representative as the most important person, and he's asking Krishna to get involved. And now this other service comes up. So there's a conflict. So Uddhava is very dear to Krishna. He's actually Krishna's cousin. He's the son of one of Vasudev's brothers. And so they're quite close, but at the same time, Uddhava is such a devotee of the Lord that he has so much love for the Lord. So they're together. So Krishna says, Uddhava, what should we do? Now Krishna knows what to do, obviously. And he says to Uddhava, what should we do? Uddhava said, well, my dear Lord, we cannot really perform the Rajasuya sacrifice as long as Jarasandha is still alive. So the first duty is to kill Jarasandha. Then the Rajasuya sacrifice will be done in the proper way when all opposing elements are vanquished. Beautiful answer. Everyone starts to cheer. Ah, well, wonderful. Krishna smiles. Yudhisthira likes it. And Uddhava is seen as, he's so intelligent. So Uddhava gets all the credit. So this is how Krishna does things. He likes to give credit to his devotees. Although he's the empowerment, he's the intelligent, and he also gives the facility. And sometimes when we see things don't fall into place, then we wonder, maybe Krishna doesn't want it. Or maybe I'm not working according to Krishna's or my spiritual master's direction. Something is not right. But ultimately, it's Krishna that gives success. Or a parent. You can't fail in devotional service. The only way you can fail in devotional service is you give up. Don't ever give up. Even if it appears things are going wrong and things... Devotional service is not about results. It's about the sincere effort to try to please the Lord. And that's the principle of life, because the principle of life, if you want to be successful in any relationship that you have to please the person you're in relationship with. Otherwise, it's not going to work. In the material world, everyone wants to please themselves, and therefore the relationships get frayed, and they either fall apart or people go in a separate direction and keep the relationship in a formal way, but there's no real relationship. So yeah, so don't ever give up. Sita never gave up. It seemed like she was in a situation where, she wasn't hearing from Ram. 10 months under the care, or not care, under the cruel lockdown of this demon, but she never gave up because her love was strong. Okay, so these are some things. Should I continue? Okay, some questions. Yeah, okay, so we have time. Anyone? Questions, comments, corrections? Way in the back there? Yes, Mataji? Do we have some way of making some volume? Some microphone? Okay.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for oh, sure. Is this working?
It's working, but it's quite low. Do we have our microphone manager up there? Okay.
Yes? Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
That's good.
Very much for the wonderful,
Thank you.
long story. Well, I have one question. Maharaj, you were saying that we worship Lord Ramchandra as in awe and reverence, and but yet all Ramayana is full with emotion.
Yeah. All in reverence with emotion.
Does it mean that does it mean when we worship the Lord in awe and reverence that we control our emotions, that we're not showing them? As in Krishna's pastimes, there is no much of controlling that emotion, but it's actually showing.
Well, you direct that emotion into the expression of awe and reverence. That's all. You don't have to kill the emotion. It's just the way the emotion is, the way the expression is offered. It's in that mood of awe and reverence. I mean, you're standing before the deities. The deities are offered, but you feel loving relationship with the deity. So, but how do you express that? You're not going to go up there and kiss the deity, you know. You might want to do that, but you might feel like you should do it. Or if you're in a different mood, you might want to just like, jump on the back of the Lord and just play like the cowherd boys do. But you can't do that. It's just not. So the mood of the expression is there, but doesn't mean you should shut down those emotions. That's all. No. And when you actually reach the stage of spontaneous love for Krishna, then Krishna will also, you will be able to experience that loving relationship in that mood like that. So, but all in reverence is a stage. It actually becomes spontaneous attraction as we develop in our purity in Krishna consciousness. And that is actually required to come to that stage of loving emotion. That's the mood of Vrindavan, but that mood can also be expressed towards Ramchandra also, like that. Mm-hmm. Does that help? Yeah, thank you. That was a nice question. Yes, Vrindavan Nath, yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you Maharaj for a very nice, amazing class. As you mentioned that Lord Ram always wanted to follow his superiors, and Mother Sita or Lakshman, Bharat, Hanuman, they all wanted to give happiness to Lord Ram. They just wanted to serve. So on this most auspicious day of Ram Navami, I have just this question that how we can do little service so can give some happiness to Lord and spiritual master from this tiny jiva.
What can you do to honor the Lord on this day? You can chant His name, you can hear about His pastimes, you can speak His pastimes. All of these are service. It's all, glorification is actually, it's also service. You're serving by glorifying. You're serving by hearing. And if you have an opportunity now, just like many of our devotees here will be cooking, that's service also. And there'll be devotees who will be assisting in the cooking, that's also service. And there's devotees who will be doing Harinam Sankirtan, that's also service. So choose. You can choose how you want to serve. But I would say, just don't do anything else today, that's all. Yeah, and give your whole time, at least one day a year to Ram anyway. That's what it, and the mercy on this day is greater than it would be on any other day in relationship to Ram. Yeah. Because on his appearance day, there's extra mercy available. Not only in the form of service, but in the form of the happiness that you will be experiencing when you serve on this day. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Let's see, yes. Okay. Over here. Mataji. Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Thank you for the instructive class. My question is, we can see from Ram Leela, like Bharat Maharaj always being misunderstood, even though his goal was ultimately to make Lord Ram happy. So similarly in our lives also we come across the situations where we are misunderstood.
It happens all the time.
Yes. So how can we deal with this?
It's just the way the material world works. There's, people even they're together as husband and wife, and they somehow, even though they know each other, sometimes there's a misunderstanding. It's just the way it is. To avoid that, everything should be, if you can see that in this situation there will be some misunderstanding, communication helps to alleviate the possibility of misunderstanding. And honest and open communication. That's one way to prevent, but you'll see even in the best circumstance there's misunderstanding. But try not to make it to a point where it'll cause the relationship to turn in a different direction, to go in the wrong direction. So think ahead of time. Does that person really understand me? And so we can speak about it also. Be a little bit more open. And kind of look for some of the possibilities which will cause misunderstanding. Try to see that and avoid that. And there's an example where Prabhupada was in one temple, and he was standing in that with some brahmachari was there, and a guest came in. And the guest, Prabhupada immediately turned to the brahmachari and said, "Bring him some Mahaprashadam." The devotee left, went back to the pujari room, and at that time the pujari had just put the offering on the altar. And so he said to the brahmachari, "Well, the offering just went on, so you're going to have to wait, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So he came back to Prabhupada, and he told him, and Prabhupada said, "No, bring it now." He didn't want the guest to wait. So the devotee went back, and at this time the pujari was chanting his Gayatri. And so the devotee walked right past the pujari, walked on the altar, got the plate, and started walking off. And Prabhupada told him, and then the pujari, that was the end of the Gayatri, so I think he might have got his finger twisted a little bit. And he's following the brahmachari who's carrying the prashadam, and they both arrive at Prabhupada at the same time. Now, who's wrong? Is there anybody in that situation that's wrong? No. Nobody's wrong. Misunderstanding. That's a real extreme example of misunderstanding, but it does happen. There's other understanding that where some communication could have been there. The brahmachari could have said, well, actually Prabhupada doesn't want to wait, he wants it now. But he didn't think like that. So maybe he didn't think to say that. So yeah, the communication, I think, helps to mitigate the possibility of misunderstanding. But it's just the way it is. We expect sometimes when we do things or say things that people will understand us. That's funny. So try not to do things that will cause people to misunderstand. Does that help a little? Yeah. It's just more about communication like that. And sometimes when you want people to understand something, you preface what you're going to say to help them understand easier. You introduce what you want to say before you say it. Yes. Okay, that's it. Thank you. All right, so we have to stop here. So this is the beginning of the day. Have a wonderful day and chant, dance, and take prasadam later. and try to spend as much time as you can in hearing the glories, chanting the glories of Sri Ram. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna dear devotees, Lord Ram. Lord Ram will come in the form of a shalagram very soon with a kirtan party, and the pujaris request everyone who wants to bathe should keep in mind that the person should be in devotional clothes, second initiated, and altar clean if you go for the abhishek. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Please someone start kirtan here.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna.
Shri Ramchandra Bhagwan ki.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Haribo. Please, we request everyone sit down so the devotees from the back can see the Abhishek. Please sit down. Everybody, please sit down.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama Rama Rama
Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare
Hare
Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare
Hare
Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Sita Ram, Jaya Sita Ram.
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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare
Hare
Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Беги скорее, туда тебе дадут цветочки. Беги скорее.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Why do you stop? Sorry, I'm just making sure.
Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. The Harinam will start in the city in Watford High Street at 11:30, and Vaisheshika Prabhu will join, and other Prabhupada disciples. Please go and enjoy the Harinam.
Yeah, just let it there. It's just you.
one balloon. Balloon is to pump the air inside, and then you press the key, sound will come. It amplifies your volume, your sound. And then if you put the recorder, it records.
A recorder. A record mic, right?
There is our bag.
Which one?
No, we got bag.
Oh wow. Everything has just literally been... Because they're going to need this backspace to... Hare Krishna. Who else would it be? Hare Krishna. Happy Ramadan. No, we can get the backspace. We just get rid of the... Because at the back here, the players and all that... JC's already sent a message to because they do their their stuff on the back. Hey, Hare Krishna. Huh? Sorry? Yeah. There is no Kirtan in the Valley, that's the problem. Yeah? I thought you said they advertised on the A41. I was like, where were you standing on the A41? They were advertising. There's 2 hours. Yeah, Visakha Guru. Yeah. As long as you're not doing on the A41, like I said, it's fine, yeah? Harinam on the A41 doesn't work very well. Well, it depends who the audience is, actually. You're right there, Nima. Okay. We'll get the, leave this with me, we'll follow it to the room tonight. Should we start sorting out now?
What's the setup that you
Let's just have a look at the schedule. 7, 8,
I had 6.
7. The 7. My counting is getting better somehow. You've got the schedule. Let me just read.
It's on a text, right?
Yeah. Let me just forward it to you again. If I just put it, shall I put it on the text group and then that way we just... Okay. So, let's see. Welcome Kirtan. So we can set up the Kirtan. That's at midday.
Simple. That's simple.
Yeah. But we do, let's do, you sing do your wireless?
No, I don't like wireless. Even if it's simple, like...
Thank you. I convinced you to do fixed. Great. Okay, we'll just
No, I mean, Prema was the only one who was sold wireless.
He used it this morning with that mic out.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
The Prema setup.
Yeah. It's because it's easy. But we just set up like 4 or 5 mics. Keep it simple.
Are they on stage? Proper staying here the whole time? He's going to be... I mean, it's there, or...
We should just let him be where he is. If he's doing play statements, Pajara or somebody for so that he should remain there. This, I mean, maybe, sorry. Maybe Radhika Sullivan can move on the side here, and so Prabhupada one side, but no, they would remain there. But I don't know how that works in a drama, because when you do a drama, you can't have people running around into the background. It doesn't make sense. So maybe what we can do, and when Ravin, again, it's a Ravin, because if we'll make a decision, it will change.
No, let Ravin come.
Maybe Prabhupada goes in the middle there, but then you have to have barrier, and you've got to have someone to look after.
Okay.
All right, look, that is only a play thing. We can work that out before that. So what have we got? We've got that 12:45 School of Bhakti, Lord Ram's relatives, right? So they want, that's like 4 chairs, wirelesses, standard setup. We've got batteries upstairs.
I mean, if we're doing Kirtan with wire, we can just use the microphone, the same microphone.
Yeah, but it always looks better if you've just got a handheld on the side, right?
No, I found that it's
if they're speaking all the way through, then that's fine. But otherwise, whatever works. The only thing you can run the wires. You can run the wires from the back. Okay. So then why don't we just do like 7 mic standard setup that we just reuse? Yeah. I can get the guys to bring all the seats and stuff on.
What I would like people to do is
we're going to do it. We're just waiting for a couple of we started 12 and they told the volunteers to come at 11:10. This time I didn't step in on the arrangement of this program, so everything's going to go now last minute. Because if we've got everyone at 11, they'll arrive by 11:10, and then we would clear up. I'm going to try and do as much as I can. If you want to, everything up there I've just tidied it, so it's clean and it's all running. Projector, don't really need one. They just run screens. So we had this trip yesterday, I don't know what caused it. We've had a couple of trips like this, and it seems to be the same breaker up there. So I'll talk to Raj to get a team and see if they can try and work out why that's happening. Maybe something sensitive. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me get some cleaning stuff. I'll start doing that. Do you need wires? I will need to adjust the heads on these as well. It's one thing after another. Hi, well, how are you? You alright? You got enough hands? Sure.
I wish I had Chad to review her.
Yeah, I know. That in another life.
I told you, Ravi's not here.
Yeah, he's not. So
can you
I was gonna say, shall I clean the stage?
Well, I sort out the back.
Yeah. Huh?
That thing, a chair, grab it. It's Mooney's.
I'm good. Lovely to see you. You okay? Hare Krishna.
Can you grab the door?
How are you, brother?
Good, thank you.
Keeping well?
Hope you're keeping well also. Sure.
Use this. Put it in the chair.
Behind the chair, behind the chair.
have to. I'm editing it right now. You're apparently Prashad starting. All right, I'm editing still. You said 12 o'clock. I'm editing it. You still editing it? Yeah. Thanks. How long will it take? About 5-7 minutes, I think.
Supply outside with us, so we just need the speaker. So if you remove this, then we go.
Where did they do the power?
It's right outside. No, I sent you an email because you want it.
This is you sent me
Last night.
nothing on it.
No, but the details are there. What the food item is.
I'm going based on this.
It's the same. It has the same thing.
Paneer.
Yeah, it's paneer sabji. Basically it's the same menu I said. It's just that he's written it short for here.
It's what's happened is I've started literally doing it based on this.
Okay, fine.
So here, like Puri's there, and then Puri's up there as well.
Yeah, I ordered it into an order where people will...
Yeah, so I'm trying to